How's it going, everyone? Today I'll be going over my, let's say, starting astrophotography setup. I wish I had this kind of a video when I was starting. I had to do a lot of troubleshooting myself. So I'm gonna show you my setup. I'm gonna show you how everything's plugged in, what's powering what, how it's all mounted, how to balance it. And then when it gets dark, now it's kind of like noon, just before lunch. Today looks like it might be clear. So once it's clear, we're gonna move it outside, and I'm gonna show you the whole setting up, polar alignment, preparing for shooting, focusing, and so on. For my astrophotography setup, the camera, I have the Sony Alpha A7, old but good camera. It's full frame, I believe 24 and something megapixels, so the photos have big resolution. Had it for a while. Mounted to it is the Tamron 70-300 millimeter lens. I believe the f-stop at the 300 is 6.3. And then on the front of it, I use a light pollution filter from Hoya. Then on the camera itself, through a cold shoe, like an adapter, I mounted the Lacerta, I believe it is 130 millimeter guide scope. And then looking through it is the ZW ASI 120 Mini as the guide camera. That's it for the photo setup. Now let's look at the mount. Let me move it closer here. Now then, for my astrophotography mount, I use the Skywatcher Star Adventure GTI with the included tripod. It also has the extension shaft. My setup usually isn't big enough to smash into the tripod while moving, so I don't use it. I have tried just using the Star Adventure GTI with the included app, polar align it, mount everything up, everything's perfectly balanced. Still, with just this, 40 seconds to maybe minute and a half, where, let's say for 2-minute exposures, I was already starting to see some trails, so definitely wasn't great. So I knew I had to upgrade that. That's why I bought this guy, the ASIAIR Mini. That is now the whole brains of the operation. For the setup, I mount the ASIAIR Mini right here onto the leg of a tripod. Then I power it with a 60 watt power supply. It's gotta be 12 volts, 5 amps, 60 watts total. Just make sure that the barrel jack is the one that will fit into the ASIAIR. That goes straight into the input. To make the ASIAIR communicate with the Star Adventure, I have cables from the Star Adventure running right here along the tripod, down here, and then I have 2 cables. One here that I use the ASIAIR to power the mount, and then off frame is this USB right here that I plug into the bottom of the ASIAIR, which basically then controls the tracker. Plugged in, so we have power to the ASIAIR. We're powering the Star Adventure GTI from the ASIAIR unit, and then there is a USB going from the ASIAIR unit to this printer style connector that goes straight into the Star Adventure. It is not recommended, however, to power the Star Adventure straight from the ASIAIR. When I used to use a battery bank, power the ASIAIR and everything else, I used to get a lot of warnings in the ASIAIR app that the voltage is low, so it does not like powering the tracker. But ever since I started using the wall outlet, I do not get those warnings anymore. So when I'm here and I have a power outlet, I just power it from here. Once I go outside, I'm gonna probably either get a second battery bank or just figure out a way how to power the ASIAIR and the tracker separately. Now that the tracker is plugged in, let's mount the camera. I'm gonna move you guys up a bit. Mounting the camera, easy peasy. Just make sure that the tightening knob is pointing down and make sure it's as center as you can get it. I usually plop it in somewhere right in front of the camera body. That's where I want the tightening point to be. It doesn't have to be perfectly balanced yet. We're gonna be doing that later. Now it's just for the mounting. So just mount it there and you're good to go for now. What do I have for the setup so that the camera talks to the ASIAIR unit? I have this braid of cables. What is here is a dummy battery for the Sony Alpha, cable that connects the ASIAIR to the Sony Alpha, and then a Type-C cable that connects the ASIAIR to the guide camera. And then I have a dew heater for the guide camera, for the main camera, and then I have a secondary for the lens because it's quite long. Let me rotate it a little bit so we can see it. Just a little bit more. There we go. I have the cables running up the tripod leg right here. Then I use Velcro strip to mount the cables to the plate. That's basically so there's not the cables pulling straight into the equipment, but they're mounted here so that this is where this is pulling, not there. First of all, I'll take the dummy battery and plug it into the camera. Go just like that. I always think about it in a way where deal with power and then you deal with data. So battery's in there, so we have the power. Now for the data. We have the camera cable right here, which is the weird Sony standard. To the side of it. There we go. Now, second data will be for the guide camera. Let me point you up a bit. There we go. That's for the guide camera right here. There we go. Now, this is the dew heater for my guide camera. I usually wrap it around where the lens of the scope is. And then just tighten it real nice. Now for the other two dew heaters, put one right here. You can just hold it, tighten it, and close it. There we go. And then my third dew heater, and that's that. Once again, we mount it. There's power in the camera, data in the camera, and this cable brings both power and data to the guide camera. We have a dew heater on the guide scope and two dew heaters on the camera lens, one here, one here. How does this all communicate with the ASIAIR? Let me show you. As you can see, our braid of cables from the photography setup goes right here, continues along the way right here. Then these are the two important cables, the silver for the camera and the gold for the guide camera. Again, plug it into the bottom of the ASIAIR unit, just like that. Then for the power to the camera itself, I have a little power brick here that basically has one USB for one dew heater, second USB for a second dew heater, and then the dummy battery for the Sony Alpha has two USBs going into it right here. And then they both go into the splitter right here. We have power to everything and we have data to everything. Now let's balance. Now that we have everything mounted, powered and connected, we have to balance it. If it's not balanced properly, the motors have to work more one way than the other. Your errors will be all over the place. So you want to have it perfectly balanced. For my setup, I already know that I need a heavier included weight that was included with my Star Adventurer. There we go. Here's the balancing shaft. You plop it on right here. And I'm gonna leave it almost at the bottom. Usually I wanna balance the camera first. Right below the white mounting point, there's the clutch to open it. So I'm gonna loosen that. And as you can see, the camera goes down immediately. So I'm gonna loosen the mount. And since it's falling forward, we're gonna move it backwards and then tighten it. Now let's see, if I let go, it's not falling forward, it's not falling backward. What you basically want to do is you want to kind of move it with one finger and just see if it's as easy pushing down as it is pushing up. I'm trying, and it feels to me like pushing it up is a little bit harder than pushing it down. I'm gonna move the camera backwards just a little bit more, just like a centimeter. Tighten it back up. And now down. up. Yeah, I gotta say it's pretty similar. Awesome. Now that I'm done balancing the camera, I'm gonna tighten up the clutch again for the other. The clutch is right here, this green little knob. So I'm gonna loosen that. Now I wanna go sideways and basically see what happens when I let go. The weight is pulling it back down. So for the weight, the further it is from the object, the heavier it is because it has more leverage. The closer it is to the point, the less it has. Think of it like a seesaw. If you're closer to the middle, you're lighter. If you're further from the middle, you're heavier. Move the weight up. And now let's see, I'm gonna move it towards the center again, let go, and it's standing perfectly still. Just like with the camera, I'm gonna try to just move it up and down, and just by feel, try to see if up or down feels any heavier. I think it's perfect. I think we nailed it. Awesome. So, what's the last thing I like to do is just put it sideways, loosen the camera clutch as well. So let me loosen that. There we go. And now just like see if I can put it into any position and see if the mount stays in that position. So I have an object there, standing perfect, there, standing perfect, then the other side. Which I believe we have it nice and balanced. So first you want to put the body of the tracker perfectly center again and tighten it. Now you want to put the body of the camera again level with this tightening knob pointing straight down the middle and then tighten. That's pretty much it. We have the ASIAIR connected to the tracker, both power and data. We have the camera connected to the tracker and the ASIAIR, and the camera's getting power and data, and the guide, scope and camera are getting power and data. All there's left is to power it. Okay, and plugging it in. There we go. Now the ASIAIR should have a chime telling us that it's on. There it goes. So the ASIAIR is on. Now make sure after the ASIAIR is on, you also want to turn your star tracker on as well. The camera can go on too, so let me just turn that on. There it goes. Let me just turn on the screen recorder. First, what you want to do is on your phone or tablet, download the ASIAIR app. Once you've done that, you want to go to your Wi-Fi settings, and basically if you have your home Wi-Fi, make sure you disconnect from it and also turn off the option to auto reconnect, because when you connect to the ASIAIR Wi-Fi, the tablet or phone will not recognize it as an internet service able router, and it will just switch back to your Wi-Fi. So make sure you switch off auto connect, and then in your Wi-Fi settings find the ASIAIR Wi-Fi and connect. Once you've done that, we want to open the ASIAIR app, enter device. There we go. Now it's going to show you your location info. Just Google your latitude and longitude. Make sure it's not too far off. For the Star Adventure GTI, in the mount settings, you want to choose the EQ mod mount. The main scope I got is a 300, but it does 293. It made a few pictures and it adjusted it automatically. So the program knows the focal length probably better. So I usually leave it at 293. And then my guide scope is 130 millimeters. The main camera, if it's not showing up, it's off or you don't have it plugged in correctly. So I'm gonna choose my Sony Alpha as the main. and then the ZWO ASI 120 Mini is my guide camera. Once you're done, click enter. It should establish connection to everything. Now that we're connected to the ASI Mini, we have the app, we put in all our details, focal length. You want to make sure that your camera is set up correctly. So what you want, manual focus, always manual focus, and your shutter speed needs to be on bulb, that's that. You want f-stop as low as possible, and ISO will do that in the app, so that doesn't matter. What you want to do first, click here, make sure that input voltage and input current, nothing's giving you warnings, it isn't. That's basically it. You can try if your mount works, so if you raise the rate, just see if it moves. What you want to do, this will be very important later when we get there, the moment you turn on the ASIAIR, any position that your star tracker is in will be the ASIAIR's home position. If you mess it up, it will not work properly. What you want to do is just, the moment you connect into the ASIAIR app, you want to go to the mount and you want to go to home position and start. Now, any position it will go to, if it's not straight down the center and the camera perfectly, unlock your clutches, make sure you put it perfect, then lock the clutches back up, go to home position again. Now it shouldn't do absolutely anything, and it doesn't. Alrighty, well, with that, we have everything plugged in, everything set up, the camera's balanced, the mount is balanced. So now let's wait until the evening, then we're gonna resume and I'm gonna show you my process of how I set up for a night of shooting. I'll see you guys in the evening. Hello everyone, it's right about 17:20. Right now, I believe the complete sunset is scheduled for like 18 something, and then the astronomical is around 6:40, 7 o'clock. As you can see, it's pretty damn clear. So, the equipment's waiting. So I'm gonna get it outside, turn all the dew heaters on, let it kinda acclimatize. It's 9 degrees Celsius today, so it should be pretty easy with the dew heaters. Not much condensation should be happening. Okay, I'll see you in a bit. Alrighty, let's continue where we left off. It's pretty clear today, so I'm gonna try to set up more quickly so we can get as much exposure as we can. Now for the setup, as we set it up before, the camera's mounted, the guide scope mounted, everything's powered, everything's connected to the ASIAIR, including the star tracker itself. Everything's here, power's connected to it right here. Both dew heaters turned on here, and then the third dew heater is powered from the ASIAIR. Everything's on, everything's nice and toasty. Camera settings, just as I described. I have the tablet connected to the ASIAIR Wi-Fi. I have the app open, so I'm gonna start recording the screen and walk you through it. All you gotta do, step by step, would be make sure you mount everything. The mount is vertically straight, the camera nice and horizontal. Now, before turning it on, I made sure and then put the mount so that pointing in the direction of the Polaris. You don't have to be super precise. The polar alignment tool in the ASIAIR will do that for us. Okay, we're starting to record. This is exactly where we left off. First thing you want to do is go to your mount, go to home position. For me, it moved a tiny bit. If it moved a lot, if it did anything sideways, anything like this, either for the camera or the mount, right now I would unlock the clutches, put it into this exact position, and then go home, and then it shouldn't do absolutely anything. Right now, looking at it, everything's just as it should be, pointed towards the Polaris. So, first thing we gotta do in the app is go here, preview, and go to PA, so that's polar alignment. Set up the scope and mount as shown. All we're gonna do is loosen the clutch for the camera and point the camera straight up. Okay, and then we tighten the clutch back up. Now that we have it, you wanna set, I usually go for like 1600 ISO, and then here the exposure just 3 seconds, so it doesn't take forever, and then click go. Okay, it made its first photo, so let's see what it's gonna say. I'm gonna plate solve. Might have a few difficulties because of the light for the shooting. It solved the plate. Now that the plate is solved, you click next and it's gonna rotate the camera this way by 60 degrees. So next. I hope you can hear me. There's a lot of noise. Hopefully it's gonna be okay. It finished rotating the axes. Now it's gonna make a picture. Loading. There we go. Now it's gonna plate solve. Okay, let's go. Now it's basically gonna show you how off you are, and it's gonna show you whether to go up and down or left or right. Left or right, you adjust with these little knobs at the bottom, and then up and down by this big one at the front. I usually try to go little adjustments at a time, so I'm gonna loosen the 2 locks on the side so I can go up and down. So they're saying up, which means tightening this big bolt. So I'm gonna do just like 4 little moves, and then to the right, which means loosening the left bolt and tightening the right one. Again, just like 4 little amounts. Then we click refresh, make a photo. There it goes. So again, we gotta go up just a little bit, and then still a little to the right, just a tiny bit, and refresh. Very good. We went right too much, so I'm gonna go tiny bit left. And now for the up and down adjustment, you always want to be going up. I find that with the Star Adventure GTI, if you're loosening, it doesn't really move as responsibly, but in tightening you can really make fine adjustments. So always try to end with tightening. So I'm gonna go lightly on the tightening so I don't go over. Okay, so on the left one we're good to go. We did go over a little bit, but within 5 minutes for each of the adjustments is what we need. So I'm gonna finish. There we go. Now from PA, we wanna go to preview. I usually go to home position afterwards. Now that it's polar aligned, we go home, and then what I like to do next is just make sure that we are in focus. So I'm gonna put my focusing mask on, get a bright object, and then we'll focus. First, let's find a bright object. So for that, we're just gonna go to the Sky app here and find something nice and bright. I'm not sure you can see it on the camera, but Venus is nice and bright today. So I'm gonna use that as my focus. So let me click on Venus and go to, I'm gonna prepare my focusing mask. If you don't have one of these, definitely get it. It makes it much easier. Also, don't put it on yet. If you put it on right now, the ASIAIR might have trouble plate solving. So first, wait for it to make sure it's centered. Then we're gonna do the focus. Now I can already see it on the camera screen that Venus is nicely centered. Awesome. Now that we have it centered, I'm gonna go and put my focusing mask on the front of it. First, I'm gonna change my ISO to, let's say, 3200, so we don't have to have as long of an exposure, and make a 5-second photo. Alrighty, and we can beautifully see the 3 rays of light. The middle one should be bang on in the middle. If it's not perfectly in focus. Since Venus is such a big target, I believe I can just look into my camera screen. Otherwise, you would have to adjust, make a photo, adjust, make a photo. So now that I've adjusted on the camera, I'm gonna take another picture. I'm gonna lower it to 3 seconds. There we go. That's beautifully centered. I believe that's it for the outside. we made sure we're aligned, we focused. So now get a target and start shooting. I'm just gonna choose a target I would like for today. If you're not sure what you want to shoot, you can just go to Objects and see tonight's best. Me, from my balcony, I have available everything west side of the meridian. Let's see, southern region. I could do just a quick Andromeda, so we can try to do the exposure. So I'm gonna go to Andromeda. In the meantime, just make sure that your cables don't snag when you aim at your first object. Now it's gonna make sure it's centered as usual. Okay, it's not completely on it, so it's gonna move a tiny bit. Take another picture. And there we go. We are bang on centered. We're still at 3200 ISO, so I'm gonna go ahead and take a 3-second exposure. Let's take a look. Okay, 3-second exposure. You can see Andromeda straight in the middle. Stars, as you can see, are trailing a little bit. So we're gonna deal with that with the guide scope. So for the guide scope, I'm not gonna show how to focus that right now, but it's pretty easy. You just point the camera at a bright object, so just as we had Venus, and then you would basically go here to the guide, make it bigger, go on repeat, and then you would just like loosen or tighten your guide scope, moving it in and out, and basically you would focus on the stars. As you can see here, my guide scope is pretty well focused. All the stars are nice and crispy, and it's so bright, it's so nicely dark that you can even see Andromeda on the guide scope right here. Very cool. Okay, I'm gonna move inside because it's starting to get really cold, and I'll see you then. We're inside, telescope is outside on the balcony. Now that we did all of that, I'm gonna choose tonight's target. I was planning to get the Triangulum Galaxy, the M33. I'm gonna click on it, center, and go to. So the mount's gonna go to the position. There we go. Shoot a picture, blade solve, and then adjust as it needs, just to make sure that it's centered as usual. It was just a little bit off. There it goes. There we go. It's centered, nice and easy. So what I'm gonna do, again, as you would do the same, click on guide, expand it, start looping, wait for it to get to like the first picture. Now I'm gonna click the next button over, which is gonna start calibrating it. Now it's basically gonna do through the calibrating steps. So it's gonna go west, east, north, south, just to make sure it counts the errors and so on and so on. That it usually takes about 3 to 5 minutes. So I'm just gonna let it sit, and I'm gonna come back once it's finished. Alrighty, so we're back. It took just around 2-3 minutes. So now what you can basically see is the calibrating has finished, and now it's guiding as per what the guide scope sees. You can see on the graph that right now we have just the blue line. What we need to do is wait for the guide to settle. So we need the red line to also appear. There we go. The red line has just appeared. Basically what you want is an error below 5 minutes again, same as with the polar alignment, you want to have that similar threshold for your guide system. We're gonna have both of them, and the total will be below 5. As you can see, the red one is slowly going to the line in the middle. So I believe just a little bit longer, and we're gonna be ready. Alrighty, good. Okay, it's still writing 3132 because it needs to basically get far enough right so that it deletes data from the left. But as you can see, the lines are pretty much on top of each other right now. Since that's the case, I believe we can just start trying exposure. So my working exposure that I'm currently comfortable with, and that usually brings me good results, is ISO at 800, and then the exposures I can get all the way to 300 without having to worry about any kind of star trails. And yeah, and there we go. As you can see, the guide, if I make it bigger, right now the RA is 0.98, the DEC is below 3, so total we have 3.08, so that's a great error. Now I'm gonna try to do an exposure, so let's do something short for now. So I'm gonna do 1600 ISO, and I'm gonna give it, let's say, a good testing exposure, so let's say 1 minute. Let's start that. You just saw that the graph went from like a smaller to a bigger graph. That's because beforehand the scale was 8 to -8, but now that the error is so small, it goes to 4 -4, so that it basically zooms in on it. And I mean, error 1.5848 is pretty great. I think I could go above 300 seconds, so above the 5-minute mark. I'm not sure if it would be good for me because of the light pollution and stuff. And it's I used to be on 3 minutes with just the tracker. With the ASIAIR, I think the 5 minutes is like a sweet spot. So I'm keeping it on there. Oh, the photo's finished. So let's look at our result. There we go. You can see beautiful detail in the middle already from just one exposure. I have my target for today. It is the Triangulum Galaxy. So what do? We're gonna set our ISO to what we want. As I said, I shoot at 800 and 300-second exposures. You wanna go from preview, you wanna go to Autorun. How do we set it in Autorun? 3 dots. It is going to be M33, group by slot, meridian flip. I don't think we have to do because it already passed the meridian and now it's just going to be getting closer in front of my windows. I do the first delay, 5 seconds, just to make sure. Then I have the interval at 15 because I've noticed that once the camera makes a picture, because inside the body of the camera the shutter goes up and down, it moves the camera, basically shaking it. So I leave it 15, sometimes even 20 seconds, just to make sure that the guide settles again, and then it can continue. I don't go to home, I don't have a reason for that. I don't shut down, that's up to you. And then what we want is just, let's say, just so I can show you what it looks like normally, I'm gonna delete everything. There we go. And what you want to do is just do plus. First of all, we want our light frame. So as I said before, at least I use 800 ISO at 300 seconds exposures. Usually I aim to get 40 exposures, then I'm usually happy with my picture. So I'm gonna do 300 second, 40 exposures, confirm. And as you can see right here at the bottom, it's estimating that the 40 pictures will take 3 hours and 34 minutes. I'm happy with that. Let me go back. We have it right here. We click shoot. There in the bottom right hand corner you can see the delay. It's gonna shoot, so I'll be back with you in 5 minutes. While we're having our picture taken, we still have about 3 minutes left almost. What do we need to do? First of all, set it up if you're shooting from home. If you're not shooting from home, then just make sure you have the cables bundled in such a way that when you go to your shooting place, you can set up quickly so you don't lose precious time. Make sure, so mount the camera, mount the counterweight. Do not balance until you have every single thing on your setup. So the filter on your lens, the sunshade, dew heater, because if you balance before and then you add something to it, it will knock the balance again. So make sure you have everything on your setup, then balance, not before that. Once we have that, at least half an hour before shooting, I put the setup outside, turn on all the dew heaters, make sure everything gets to the temperature so that we're focusing and everything already when the camera got acclimated to the outside temperature. Once we have that, once we're outside, not turned on anything yet, we basically want to make sure that the mount is in its default position, which means this adjustment is straight down, the camera is perfectly horizontal with the tightening knob pointing towards the ground. Once that's that, we plug everything in, the ASIAIR turns on, and first thing you want to do, go to the mount icon and click go home. The mount should not move whatsoever. If it moves to any position, you want to loosen your clutches and put it into the default position again. So vertical, horizontal for the camera. Once you do that, close the clutches again, go home again. Now it shouldn't do absolutely anything. That's where you want to start. Once you have that, you want to point the mount roughly towards the Polaris. You don't have to be super accurate. You want to go in the app from preview to polar alignment, follow the steps, adjust until it's bang on. Make sure you're in focus, so focus your camera, then you can focus your guide scope as well. Once you've done that, you want to take your first preview picture, let's say 30-60 seconds. It might trail, that's okay, but once you're on your target for that night, want to go to guide, start looping, click on start guiding. You're gonna calibrate all of the motors and so on and so on. Once it's done, you will see the red and blue lines in the graph. Wait for them to settle. I usually wait like 5-7 minutes, then they settle onto a nice small error. Once we have that, go to Autorun, set it up, set up your desired exposure. For reference, I do 800 ISO, 5-minute pictures, and it works quite nice. Alrighty, now let's take a look. Our first exposure from our Autorun has been finished. You can already see some detail in the picture. It's 7 o'clock, it should be 3 hours, so around 10 o'clock we should be done. I'll be signing off for now. I'm gonna let this run, and once it's finished, I'm gonna do a calibration frames, and around midnight I'm gonna turn it all off. Alrighty, I'll talk to you later. Good morning everyone. I got the telescope back in at around midnight yesterday. I believe we got 50 exposures. What does it look like? Just open up your PC, connect the ASIAIR to your computer via a USB cable, then ASIAIR is going to be in the Autorun lights, and yesterday our target was M33. So triangle and galaxy, M33. Today was the 29th of January. 29th of January. We did 800 ISO, 300 second exposures. Bloop. If you want to, I can explain that in a future video. If you would like the whole calibration frame process, open up the Deep Sky stacker. In the stacker, let's open the picture files. So we're gonna go to our Astrophotography folder, triangle and galaxy, all of the picture. So Control A and open. Now, dark files. So I'm gonna go to my calibration library, dark, and I'm gonna be reusing. I didn't take any new calibration last time. That's why I'm kind of sticking to 800 ISO, 300 second exposure, so I can reuse. It is a little dependent on the temperature, so it's not going to be ideal. I think it's better than nothing, and considering how little clear nights we have, I'm fine with reusing right now. So that is the master dark, put in a master flat, master dark flat, and then the offset. There we go. Open. I got all my light frames, master flat, master dark, dark flat, and offset. I usually do this stacking process as per the instructions from Astro Backyard. Let's register check pictures. Now on 2% we have 1800. I'm gonna move it up a little bit, 700. I'm happy with that. You usually want to be below 1000 because otherwise it's gonna take a long time. So okay, this will open, yeah. And here you can see that we have 50 frames, total exposure 4 hours and 10 minutes. I think that's pretty good. So okay, just gonna make sure that my picture is safe right here. If you like the video, like and subscribe. If you'd like to see anything else, let me know. And here's the final result.